Hey guys, welcome back. It's the Sports with Mono and Mono show. It's November 5th, right? Halloween's in the rearview mirror.
It is.
Leaves have fallen. It's causing a lot of stress for me, but
Not for me.
yeah, I
I'm an
know.
apartment guy now.
Exactly.
I never pick up a leaf, nor will I ever. I'm happy.
Thank you. So anyway, welcome back to the show, folks, and so happy you could join us. And there's a lot of stuff going on. And first, before we start, Steve has our monologue this week. I wanted to thank him for being playing the role of Ralph Cramden last week as the bus driver, and he did a fine job. And we'll take some feedback from our audience, whether Steve can drive the bus or Jim can drive the bus,
Why can't
whatever.
we both drive the boat?
That's what I think. You're right.
No holler and hurdle from the honeymooners.
And don't forget the 50-minute lecture.
Private bus. Private bus.
I bust a drive.
Bus a drive. Private bus.
Anyway, great job last week, Steve. And so it's a beautiful day, a lot of stuff to talk about, and I'm going to turn this over to Steve, who has this week's monologue.
Well. Guess who I'm going to open up with?
Oh boy, here we go.
Kyrie Irving. Here we go again.
We might as well get the elephant out of the room.
That's
Go
exactly
ahead.
right.
And of course, first of all, I'm sorry, but our monologue is sponsored by Coriano Trucking, of course, of Summerhill, New York. Thank the guy and turn it over, Steve.
Well, I thought it was going to be sponsored by Hebrews to Negroes, the Black Wake Up Black America. This is a movie that
I don't even know the name of the
nobody's
movie.
even heard of this. Anti-Semitic, but here is Kyrie Irving back in the news, and this time it obviously has a lot of overtones to it and anti-Semitic, Semitic overtones to it. It just doesn't stop. I mean, the Brooklyn Nets are just a complete laughing joke of a franchise right now. And to have this guy as the face of the franchise, it's mystifying to me. Kyrie Irving is not a stupid guy. He's not. He's intelligent, to be honest with you. But I just can't. I can't wake up on a Monday or whatever it is and read about Kyrie Irving again being front page for anything not basketball related, really. Again, the pandemic with get vaccinated, not vaccinated. That's a personal choice. I'm really not throwing them under the bus for that because there's plenty of people out there that didn't get vaccinated. Okay, but this is a whole different animal here, right? So not only does he tweet and put a link out to this atrocious film, um, it's his response to it, and it's his just unwillingness to accept responsibility. He did have this press conference. It was somewhat contentious. It was somewhat, is he apologizing? Yeah, with a gun to his head type of thing. But the point is, the monologue here, unfortunately, when you say elephant in the room, we have to address it. It's Kyrie Irving. I'm sick to death of it. This is why we talk about the NBA, where it's not the NBA of old, and it's such a terrible look for the NBA.
Okay. Well, and that's a perfect monologue to bring it up with all the stuff that's going on in sports right now. That's awesome. It's an absolute mess. And a couple of things that have gone on with this Kyrie thing. He makes so much money. It none of this has anything to do with him. And he just lost his Nike sponsorship or whatever it was, right, Steve? Like today.
Well,
But that's another 50 million he
your
was going to
actions
make.
have consequences.
And they do. I don't know the name of the movie. I don't know anything about it, but I know he's just belligerent. And this franchise. And what else happened this week? They got their coach fired. And if anybody tells me any differently that it wasn't Kevin Durant that said Steve Nash has to go, and what I say, Steve Nash, take your money and get out of this. You don't need this circus anyway. And then this Kyrie Irving, you know what that means? He just wanted another 5 games off, right? Which is 2 weeks. He likes to take respites during the season. So I'm not sure about the whole connotation of the anti-Semitism and the black man. I have no idea about that, but I don't know anything about the movie. But this guy is an absolute cancer to any team he makes, and they pay him $40 million a year, and he makes 5 times that in endorsements. You're right, great point. But Steve Nash, he got thrown out, and anybody tells me differently that Kevin Durant didn't have him fired, you're not aware of what's going on.
So what? I mean, Steve Nash was the one for this job anyway. He to me actually kind of looked. This is Steve Nash you're talking about, one of the best basketball players.
And it was his first coaching job. I get that. I get that.
Okay. So what do the Nets do? Not only is it a terrible PR week with the Kyrie Irving thing, but they
Right.
fire Steve Nash. And of course, it has the fingerprints of Kevin Durant and everybody on it. But what do? Okay, let's compound it. Let's go up north and take
Ime
Udoka.
Udoka. Yep.
Let's take the guy who's suspended by the Boston Celtics for sexual harassment. Continually, the more I read about this, he was warned multiple times.
It wasn't just one consensual relationship.
Can I finish?
You may.
He's been warned multiple times. Okay, so the Nets, Udoka was with the Nets prior to him taking the Celtics to the NBA Finals. So what do? We got to get Udoka to fix all this. Okay, so to me, the Brooklyn Nets are a laughing stock. The only good thing they were able to do was get rid of James Harden, and James Harden has out a month with Philly. We can talk about that. But the Brooklyn Nets are a complete disaster. Sean Marks, to me, I actually had credibility for this guy, but he looks like a buffoon. Sean Marks, in my opinion, if Steve Nash, once he got fired, should have said, "I'm out the door here, too," and out the door I'd go.
No, but why resign and say just when Kevin says it's time for me to go, I'll go and I'll take my money. He's going to be a head coach somewhere else.
That's fine. But my point about all this is why I don't like the NBA. This is why I cannot watch the NBA on a consistent basis.
Yep.
And Adam Silver, we've talked about, who's done a super job here, making money for the league.
He's a marketing guy.
The guy is a more than credible guy, integrity, et cetera. This has been a bad couple weeks of the NBA. And guess what, folks? It's not going away anytime soon. Okay. And it will just continue.
So listen, with the Nets, right, they got off to a little bumpy start, but you watch. The Nets are going to win 20 out of 27 games in the next month or so, and they'll be in the mix. But you're right, this whole situation, and we've covered it ad nauseum, the Kyrie Irving situation, I wouldn't have him on my team ever, period. Good point. Good monologue, Steve. Let's move on to some other things. Let's jump into the NFL. Right, it's Giants are 6-2, Jets are 5-3. Right, things are good in New York.
Right,
trade deadline came. There were a few moves. Right, Hawkinson to the Vikings and Chase Claypool. Right, Chase Claypool. Right,
from Notre Dame, Pittsburgh, second round pick.
Yep,
to the Bears.
I thought the Giants, that would have been a good pick for the Giants, by the way. I don't know if they were even in talk because they need some wide receiver help. These guys are dropping the ball on Jones left and right.
Giants had a home run to get rid of that piece of crap for Tony. Trust me, for a third round, sixth round.
Right.
Giants are okay.
Right, but that leaves us with.
They have Kenny Golladay, who, seriously, I mean, just what they're paying the guy for.
He doesn't want to play, though.
Well, I don't know that. I don't.
He doesn't want to play for this team. Okay. He feels isolated. Nobody's throwing on the ball, right? This is the Isaiah Moore situation on the other, on the other team, Elijah, whatever. So,
the big thing of this is the Green Bay Packers didn't do anything with this. The wide receiver needs, I think that needs to be brought up. Brandon Cooks wants out in Houston. Guy's making $26 million, whatever it is.
Michael Thomas is out for the Saints again. The same story. But
the point is, Green Bay did nothing to address this. So I don't know what that means for Green Bay. I think it's going to be a long year for Green Bay.
Yeah, but you know what that means? That means Aaron Rodgers didn't see anybody out there that was worthy of. He has two options: bring an experienced wide receiver who's usually disgruntled. That's why he was traded. Or maybe I could mold these kids. It's a lost year for the Packers anyway. So can he make this Christian Watson, his go-to guy? I don't know. He seems frustrated with these young wide receivers, but
it is what it is. But the deadline came and went. So the teams now are set, loaded for bear, basically for
second half.
For the second half run. The Eagles
Mhm.
clearly are playing really good football. Jalen Hurts has another solid night. He's a game manager. The Eagles defense, their offensive, defensive lines are really pretty damn good.
They look pretty good.
The trade for Brown at wide receiver looks great. They have a good running
He's
game.
a stud, by the way.
Yes, he is. They have a good running game. So the Eagles Thursday night take care of business and remain undefeated.
And how about this? Kind of ironic, right? They were playing on Thursday night, right? Houston, Philadelphia, and Houston, Philadelphia in the World Series. I thought it was kind of ironic.
I mean, how good of a for the city of Philadelphia.
I know,
right? I mean, it's Sports Central. That's what you want. That's what you play for. You play to win the game.
Thank you, Herm. Thank you. We'll move on. But a couple of things, Steve. One thing I wanted to bring up, because I've heard all this talk about this, and you and I have gone back and forth on this a dozen times about Zach Wilson.
Yeah.
They are kind of throwing him under the bus, like this guy is just out of control. And I go, wait a minute. First of all, what's this? His second or third year?
It's the second year.
Second year. And they're already saying, well, he gets in trouble, he runs around, he runs backwards, and Three Stooges kind of thing with football. It's only his second year, and he missed half of it last year, right? Give this kid gives him time to develop into an NFL quarterback. He's going to have growing pains. We've seen this for forever, right?
Well,
it drives me crazy though. Like, he's only his second year. He's only played like 16, 17 games, right? Out of a 2-year schedule.
he's
Not
the
even.
starting quarterback for the New York Jets. He was high draft pick, second overall.
I know.
Okay, the expectation levels are what they are.
And both you and I have said we're not sure he's got what it takes, but you got to give him time at least. This is Daniel Jones's 4th year. They gave him time, and look, he's starting to develop into an NFL quarterback, I think. So anyway, so let's do our picks, Steve. Right? 3 picks from Jim, 3 picks for Steve.
I'd like to go back to Zach Wilson.
Go ahead.
The eye test is what everybody's seeing. I'm concerned too. I was all aboard Zach Wilson.
Me too.
However, when you see a Justin Herbert come out of the gate, you see young quarterbacks coming out of the gate. Trevor Lawrence doesn't look overwhelmed. And I could give you a few more names.
I'm not sold on Trevor Lawrence. But anyway, go ahead.
Josh Allen had 2 years of growing pains. Is Zach Wilson going to turn into Josh Allen? Well, he better start trending upward. But to me, watching Zach Wilson, I would be awfully concerned as well. Okay, he's not making the throws and with the consistency
He's young.
that we should see. And yes, it's year 2. Yes, it's 16, 17 games. Yes, he's been hurt. Tough noogies. Let's call the NFL. Deal with it. But the Jets, back to my point, I'm concerned about Zach Wilson.
Okay. Steve, one thing I wanted to bring up, because I got some text this morning, there were a couple of things related to the Washington Commanders, right? That Daniel Snyder is considering selling the team. This guy is insane, first of all, by the way, but this is going to be the ugliest sale of any sports franchise in the history of sports.
Why?
And I don't think it's even going to happen. I honestly believe he just threw that out. He's not going to sell this team. He wants to keep this team.
They don't want him.
And they're going to run him out of town. Maybe that's going to be the end state.
That's exactly what's going to happen. It takes 24 owners to vote another owner out. It's never been done before. But the nuclear button option is there. The NFL had meetings 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago. 2 weeks, I think it was.
And they basically said, we got to get rid of this guy. And
basically what they said is they got to get rid of this guy.
but on the heels of this, and now all of a sudden he's considering selling the team. And you know who's going to buy the team? Who's the one guy on the planet that has that kind of money? Is Jeff Bezos. And you
Okay.
think Daniel Snyder is going to say, okay, write me a check for $12 billion and you can have my franchise? He's insane enough that he's not going to go away.
I'm telling you.
And I brought this up with a Washington Commanders fan, long time, and you and I know everything about and we're going to have a sad, notable passing relating to the old Washington Redskins team. But I just think this whole thing, again, one thing after the other with the NFL, that they just dropped the ball.
What are the Dan Snyder is being forced out. Okay, he's going to sell the team. He's going to have to sell the team. They don't want to play. He's not allowed to play in the sandbox anymore with the other owners. It's that simple. Washington Redskins, he bought this team for $800 million. It's now valued at $5.6 billion, which means they're going to sell this team for $7-8 billion. Is Bezos a logical candidate to purchase it? You better believe it. This is going to get done. I'm telling you, folks.
Okay.
Snyder is on his way out, and good riddance. It's been 20 years of absolute the worst owner in all four major sports. There's no question about it.
And that's a big statement to make. You're right.
So is that a coincidence? They have the NFL meeting, this, that, and the other thing. And if Snyder is going to be an ugly sell, no. For that kind of money, it's going to, you're going to buy what you're going to buy, and you're going to fix it because it's just a disaster.
It's ugly
in Washington. But Daniel Snyder is most likely on his way out, or Daniel Snyder is also the type to say, well, bring it on, because I'm not going anywhere. And this may be
that's what I think.
And this may be for minority owner, like things like that.
Okay.
But I'm going to go with he.
And I'm going to at least own 49% of this team, right?
Well.
Yeah. Right. Anyway, so let's move on, Steve, from the NFL, but let's do our picks real quick. I got a couple games here, right? Carolina at Cincinnati. Cincinnati's been struggling, coming off an ugly loss to the Cleveland Browns on primetime football. I think Cincinnati bounces back and wins this game easy. Buffalo at the Jets, right? We talked about Buffalo. They look just as good as the Philadelphia Eagles, right? They're rolling. I think they have no problem with the Jets, even on the road. And here's a little surprise for me because I just can never figure out, Kenny Bowers, why the Las Vegas Raiders just can't win football games. And it's to my point, I've always brought up that I just don't think Derek Carr is that top 5 echelon quarterback. But I do like them to bounce back. They're 2-5, 3-5, something like that. They're playing on the road at Jacksonville. I told you I'm not a big Trevor Lawrence guy anymore. I loved him at Clemson. He was amazing. But I like Las Vegas to win this week. So there's my pick: Cincy, Buffalo, and Vegas.
I'm going to take the Baltimore Ravens going down to New Orleans. Lamar Jackson on the turf in the Dome. Baltimore's 5-3. New Orleans, I have no faith in.
That's a hard team to figure out, by the way.
They're banged up. Michael Thomas is hurt, etc. At the quarterback position, you have Andy Dalton, Winston. I'm not going to say anything about that. Seattle travels to Arizona. I make all these Geno Smith jokes because it's Geno Smith. But at the end of the day, Seattle's 5-3. They're playing really good football. I'm going to take Seattle on the road against Arizona, who's 3-5, and they're not playing well. Kyler Murray, I'm a fan of, but Kyler Murray, something's going on there.
He's the second highest paid quarterback in the league, by the way.
And I mean, if we're not doing point spreads,
we're not.
Buffalo
outright over the Jets.
That's a tough one.
Going at it on a limb, are you?
I am not. It's going to be ugly.
So listen, before we move off football altogether, Steve, today's the beginning of the high school football playoffs in New Jersey, right? St. Joe's is in the mix, of course. But it's a beautiful day for football, and you had a game you went to the other night, didn't you?
I did. I went to Indian Hills, played Newark East Side in a consolation state playoff, not playoff game, consolation round. It was a great game, 31-29. It was emotional for me. It was handful of players that I coached since they were 6 years old.
Nice.
And it was their last high school football game.
Yeah.
And hey, well done, kids. You have memories now that last a lifetime. You form friendships that last a lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a great night.
Awesome.
Jackson Cole, one of our dear listeners, Corey Cole, who's
Big fan of the show, by
big
the
fan
way.
of the show. Jackson had a real good night. And my boy AJ Franchina took one right to the head on a helmet to helmet. So I hope he's feeling well.
Good.
So he's a little banged up.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was high school football on a Thursday night with the leaves, the foliage. Doesn't get better.
And tomorrow, by the way, is my grandson Logan's final game.
Yeah.
They play on the field at Mendham High School. These little kids, they're 8 and 9 years old. It's awesome. And he had a great season. It was his first season, but football, and we're not moving off football because we got to get to the biggest game of the, obviously, of the college football season, right? NCAA, Tennessee, Georgia. And you've been on Tennessee's bandwagon. I said at some point, I'm just not sure they're better than Alabama or better than Clemson, but we're going to see today. That's a big game.
Well, this is number 1 versus number 2. Tennessee, the college playoff.
It doesn't get any better than that.
The college playoff rankings came out, and Tennessee number 1 over Georgia.
Yep.
And Tennessee plays in Athens at Georgia, so this is a huge test.
They're 0-4 there, by the way.
Well, I would think Georgia at home, the defending national champions. I think this is going to be a back and forth thing. This is going to be Alabama, Georgia, type of game. And I have to go with Georgia at home here, even though Tennessee loses this game. It's not gonna hurt them much, not really. They drop them, to 3,
2 or 3, yeah,
right?
Yeah,
but we shall see. Hendon Hooker right now is the leading candidate for the Heisman. If he has a huge night tonight, and if Tennessee happens to win this game, they're for real.
Yeah.
And it's a big game. Another big game is LSU tonight against
Alabama.
So this is Saban.
It's by Keith Jackson.
Right.
By the
So
way.
this is always, LSU, Alabama. You got Brian Kelly, his first game against Alabama, where Brian Kelly, like we all know, came from Notre Dame and didn't have the horses. Right. So the national championship game, we always talk about the disparity between the talent of Alabama, Notre Dame. Well, Brian Kelly, even though this is his first year, he has the chess pieces. That's why he left Notre Dame for games like this. So let's see what LSU can do. I don't want to hear that LSU is rebuilding all this stuff.
Alabama has won 4 straight in Death Valley.
Okay.
Well, just saying,
So this is a great college
big matchup. Yep.
Huge.
See, one thing I wanted to bring up, because it was the ugly side of sports, right? It was the post game Michigan State. It was, and I actually saw some of the video. They're supposed to strategically let one team go so this exact thing doesn't happen. And this Michigan player walked in, while the Michigan State team was going into the locker room, and it was ugly. They attacked this kid. That's a bad look for Mel Tucker and his Michigan State team. I mean, it was ugly. And Harbaugh's been going crazy over it. And you know what? He has a right to. This Michigan guy just walked in and he got mixed up with these Michigan State, the whole team basically, and they packaged him. It was bad. It was a bad look.
Yeah. I mean, the way I describe it, it's like, cattle, out on the field, and one of the little
lamb
strays off into a den of not so good predators.
But these are human beings.
I understand that. I'm not defending Michigan State.
Of course not.
But Michigan State acted swiftly, and it's a bad scene. This is 2 weeks in a row for Michigan. The pushing, shoving, or the taunting with Penn State the week before. But yeah, no place for this in college football anywhere. Yep. This is it's not just a football pushing and shoving. This is literally assault.
It was assault.
So it's a bad look.
Yep.
But we'll move on from it.
We will. But listen, tons of football today, so enjoy it, folks. And like I said, send us an email. If your local team is playing in a big high school football game, send us an email at sportswithmono@gmail.com. So Steve, let's jump right into the diamond, right? The Major League World Series is underway, and it's been kind of a crazy thing. We saw the first no-hitter in World Series history since Don Larson.
Combined.
And the Phillies, on the roll that they're on, and now it looks like the Houston Astros are starting to wake up. And Philadelphia has to win one of two in Houston this week. But one point I had to make, because you and I talked about it, if Brandon Marsh, right, for Philadelphia with the beard and the long hair, these guys look like a bunch of hobos. And if you wanted to play for the New York Yankees, you couldn't have that beard, you couldn't have that hair. But this is blue collar Philadelphia. And what do you think? Can they hang on and can they win two straight in Houston? I don't think so.
I think Houston has survived the.
For 2 for 29 Altuve thing. He hasn't been hitting, and they're up 3-2.
I think Houston has turned the corner here. They got the momentum. They're heading back to Houston. I think Houston wins this. Dusty Baker, I think, will win his first World Series as manager.
He's got that bug, though. He seems to elude him, so it's not a done deal. I'm saying. I'm thinking you're right. This would be great for Dusty Baker because we're big Dusty Baker fans. But Philadelphia's not going to go down without a fight. This guy Schwarber, and Harper. These guys are bulldogs. Harper doesn't have a ring yet, I don't think. Right?
That's right, Jeremy. FUCK Philly.
Me too. Feel the same way.
However, like I said, Houston has turned the corner.
Yep.
It's been the World Series is the World Series. So you get 5 homers by the Phillies, and McCullers was absolutely tipping his pitches.
You brought that up to me the other day. I didn't even notice it, to be honest.
Watch it again. It's as blatant as you could possibly get.
Okay.
And then Houston comes back, with a combined no hitter.
Yeah.
It's certainly not lacking for theater. The World Series.
I've watched more of it than I thought I was going to watch.
And Mattress Mac, still on $75 million. The gambler down in Houston.
Yeah. And Justin Verlander won his first World Series game, right? The guy's a surefire Hall of Famer kind of thing.
Yeah, Jeremy makes a good point as well. Listen, when you say the old Yanks bullpen, I'm sure you're meaning like Jeff Nelson coming in, Mike Stanton,
Mariano Rivera.
Right, but they had the arms to bridge to Mariano Rivera.
Yep.
Houston is formidable, and again, the Phillies has been a great story to even be where they are.
Yep.
But who's to say? That's why you play them. Philadelphia still could pull this off,
Yep.
but I got to lean towards Houston.
Okay. There was actually a notable fact in World Series history. Alec Bohm hit the 1,000th home run in World Series history the other day, right? So then the first thing you do, you start going into your math, going, okay, so the first World Series was in 1903 or something, right? And the first home run was hit by Jimmy Sebring of the Pittsburgh Pirates, who lost the World Series that year to the Boston Americans. That's kind of a fun fact, right?
Yeah.
1,000th home run.
It's been a long time.
What was we remember back in the day, we brought it up when Bob Watson hit Major League Baseball's 1,000,000th home run, right?
Scored the 1,000,000th run.
Scored the 1,000,000th run. Okay, you got it. Trip me up. But that was an interesting fact that it was the Boston Americans, right? In 1903, and then they won their last one in what? What was the Boston? Before they became the Red Sox, right? The Babe Ruth trade. Anyway, but I'm into this World Series. I'm going to watch Game 6 and Game 7.
Rob, what was the Boston franchise names? Can you look that up?
No, it was the Americans, at least. But the World Series is underway, and we got that going on. And
Boston Braves.
Boston Braves is one. Right? Red Sox. Americans, and I don't know the others. So Steve, let's move on to the NBA actually, and we're kind of going backpedaling here because the Knicks are the Knicks and they packed the stadium. But look what's happened. It's a Tampa Bay Bucks, analogy in the NBA. The Golden State Warriors aren't playing well. What do you make of the NBA so far? Who's the leading? Listen, Boston looked pretty good last night, and you brought up James Harden. Of course, he's going to take a month off. So that means Philadelphia's got nothing going forward.
It's the same teams over and over that I mentioned last week. Leading scorers are Giannis, Luka Doncic, Ja Morant.
Doncic made an unbelievable
Tatum.
play. Yeah.
Those are the teams, right? Like it's still too early for the NBA. Like I said when I opened up with Kyrie Irving, it was almost sick to my stomach that I actually had to even mention his name again. But as far as the NBA, the Knicks are Jalen Brunson. This kid's a nice player. We like that. They're off to a good start. The Nets are a complete disaster. We talked about it.
Yeah.
And anything bad LA for the Lakers, I love it.
But I got to tell you this, though.
Hold on, you find something?
Looks like Boston Nationals became the Boston Braves. Boston Americans became the Red Sox.
There you go.
And then he had the Red Stockings or something.
No, that was Cincinnati.
Cincinnati Red Stockings.
Yeah. All right, so we're good on that.
Boston Braves.
No, it's Boston Red Stockings / Red Sox, and then Red Caps.
Okay, the Red Caps.
Red Caps.
Don't remember much about them. Don't remember a lot of.
Wasn't around back then.
So, Steve, let's move on to our random points of interest, and of course, this is sponsored by Lynch Toyota of Manchester, Connecticut. And Steve, so college football, right? Brian Harston. We talked about this. He's the shortest tenured non-interim coach in Auburn history. Finally, there was so much controversy surrounding this guy, I think, right? And he finally got fired. Brian Harsin, I think his name is, right?
Brian Harsin.
Harsin. So what's happening with that franchise?
From Boise State, he took over for Chris Peterson. Has a really good career record. Okay, he's a feisty coach. Okay, Auburn hires him.
What was the controversy surrounding him, though? Like, why there was a mass exodus of Auburn players to leave the program?
So, due to his coaching style, there was rebellion amongst the players last year. So, Auburn calls him in at the end of the season. They have a mediocre season, a lot of complaints. They stick with Harsin. He battles this and gets a second chance. However, it's Auburn. They're off to another bad start. He is owed a ton of money. Don't feel bad for Brian.
Oh, no, they wrote him like a $9 million check on the way out the door. It's not about money.
So
but that program is not up to the level it's been that we're accustomed to.
That's why he's sure.
Yeah. So another random point, which I thought was funny. So there's no integrity, I guess, in sports. Herm Edwards, right? We know what he did at Arizona State. It was a mess. Blew it up. Finally got fired. Guess who hires him back? ESPN.
Surprised by that? Urban Meyer.
I know. And that drives me crazy.
Back in the studio.
And it drives me crazy.
Okay.
These guys are known corruption. These guys, coach teams like Al Capone, ran a speakeasy. It's insane. ESPN just welcomes them back, and we're going to watch this on ESPN College Football Game Day. Not me.
No,
not me.
I'm not surprised by this. Like I said, Urban Meyer
crazy.
Have more of a disaster in Jacksonville, and he goes right back to his old gig.
Another one, though. When we talk about sports, and Steve and I are just diehard hockey fans, we love it. There was a 0-0 game that went into overtime. It was the Flyers Rangers. I don't know if you watched it, but people would say, "Oh my God, a 0-0 game! How boring can that possibly be?" It was one of the best 0-0 games I've ever seen, and it was just phenomenal. The Rangers hit 4 posts, and you never know. Kreider wins it in overtime. we go back. We watched Islanders Rangers games, right? We're 1-0, 2-1. It's phenomenal. It's not how many goals you score, it's the game itself. You
Yeah,
know?
it was a great game. Again, 0-0, good goaltending, defense. Tortorella comes back to the Garden, and Kreider, overtime goal. Love it. I mean, that's hockey.
Yeah.
I mean, there's plenty of high-scoring 7-5 games out there, but this was a throwback game. And again, the NHL, I love it. It's still somewhat early,
Me too.
but
And it's just like it, you know what, Steve? It's just like the NBA. You got these young guns, right? The John Morants and all these young kids. Hockey's the same thing with the McDavids, the Austin Matthews. It's a good time for both the NHL and the NBA.
yeah, locally, the Devils are starting to play better. They've fine-tuned their roster, and the Islanders are off to a somewhat good start, not the disaster that they had last year. So all three local teams in the New York area
Yep.
should be competitive. Boston is off to a great start to 10-1.
Yep.
They manhandled the Rangers the other night. Montgomery's the coach. He used to be in Dallas. He had some personal issues,
Yep.
and he's back. So Boston is formidable. They were off to a really good start.
And I just wanted to, Jeremy sent us a comment in about all these calls in the NFL designed for the, against the fan. And I think this was the whole thing. Right here it is. Enough games being called and designed for gamers, right? That's the DraftKings. That's the FanDuel. The roughing the passers, it changes the whole scope of the point spread. And that's why I'm so opposed to it. Jeremy, great point. I love it. Thank you.
Well done, Mr. Bennett. Well done.
Steve, there was a big controversy in a rapidly growing sport, by the way, cornhole, the cornhole championships. It was a big controversy about, one of the teams had illegally sized cornhole bags. Talking big money here, right? The only thing growing faster than cornhole is pickleball.
That's right.
Pickleball. Do you know what that is? I mean, do you know anything about
I
it
do.
and how rapidly it's growing?
Kevin Durant is now an owner of his own pickleball.
There's a pickleball professional league now?
Of
Is that what
course.
you're saying? I thought it was too new for
From
that.
what I gather, pickleball is just like a smaller version of tennis.
CBS Sports next year, professional Major League pickleball on TV.
Oh my God. It's going to be bigger than the Super Bowl.
Hey, we're bringing bocce to TV, baby. Bocce.
It would be like Steven and I playing on a ping pong table. I find it absurd.
Right back to cornhole. It's sports. It's on TV. Is it a sport? That's for another day.
These guys train. They look all healthy. The guy's got a big beer belly, but he's really good.
So the competitive advantage has worked its way into cornhole, where now they're cheating to get a competitive advantage, smaller bags, bigger bags, whatever it is. All I know is Johnsonville Sausages is not going to pull their sponsorship.
And listen, sports with mono and mono, we cover it all. I mean, if cornhole and pickleball are going to be the topics, there may be a monologue down the road.
Yeah, you'll be doing
Yeah, no, I won't. It's just like the MMA or UFC. I don't watch any of it, so I can. Difficult for me to see me blocking off 3 hours to watch a pickleball championship. Steve, unfortunately, let's move into our notable passings.
One other thing before that, we didn't mention on college football.
Oh.
Another big game today is Notre Dame and Clemson.
Mhm.
Right? When I say that, from a Notre Dame guy, right?
Doesn't have the allure that it is.
Still, they got 3 losses. I'm bringing this up because Notre Dame got off to the start that they did. Disappointment right out of the gate. The Ohio State game, they played them tough.
Right.
And then, of course, they lose to Marshall, which we talked about is unacceptable. So here's another example of bigger, faster, stronger against Notre Dame. So I'm curious to see if Marcus Freeman has got the guys to play better over the past several weeks for a game like this. Clemson is ranked number 4 in the college playoff. I can't. This is a good test. I wanted to see this game. I wanted to bring this up. Clemson, Notre Dame. I'm looking forward to this.
And Clemson kind of didn't actually blow out Syracuse last week. So you know what? But Dabo Sweeney gets up for these bigger games. It meant more to him that he was playing Notre Dame, before he even took the field against Syracuse. Syracuse held their own. I'm just not sold on Clemson, Steve. I'm not. I don't think they're Tennessee, Alabama, or Ohio State. I think they're the fourth team, and as an unbelievable resume that Dabo Sweeney has. I just don't see Clemson, coming out of this with the national championship. But it's a good game, though. By the way,
That's why Michigan is playing so well. So that's why I wanted to bring up the Clemson game, because if they don't have a good performance today, Michigan's going to jump them.
Yep, you're right. And where's Michigan today?
Michigan is playing
in New Brunswick or wherever it is,
and
right?
Michigan is going to beat Rutgers by minimum 40 points.
Well, I'm glad that you brought that up. And again,
Even though Rutgers played them extremely well last year.
Yes. And my feelings on point spreads, but the line I think was 26. I actually saw a few Rutgers games, and they got more good players than I thought they had. I bet they keep it under 26 points. And again, I'm not going to the window and placing a bet because I'm against it. But I don't think Rutgers is going to get absolutely blown out of that building.
Rutgers lost to Minnesota 31.
Understood. But they get up for a game like this.
Okay.
Steve, notable passings. John McVay, right? Former New York Giants head coach, former San Francisco. And Tony, you should know John McVay very well, kind of the architect of 5 Super Bowl teams.
Right.
91 years old. I guess, some infamous, fact. He was actually the head coach. And we just talked about Herm Edwards before. The miracle in the Meadowlands, the fumble. Herm Edwards runs it back. John McVay was the coach.
That's right.
But he's got quite a resume. He did some heck of a job in San Francisco.
He has a son. I think his name is Sean McVay.
It's his grandson.
It's his grandson.
Yep.
LA Rams, Super Bowl winning coach. So John McVay led a good life. He was a top-notch football guy, and all right there.
Steve, I got to bring this up because it came up, and I asked like 10 different people. The Miracle in the Meadowlands play. We know that Joe Pisarcik, number 9, was the quarterback. Do you know who he was handing the ball off to?
Number 39, Larry Zonka.
And everybody goes, Larry Zonka. I go, it was Larry Zonka.
That's right.
39.
That's right. Larry Zonka probably rushed for the Giants, maybe 6 feet.
I know. On 12 carries, right?
Larry Zonka obviously was
Hall of Famer,
no question. But yes, Larry Zonka.
Yep. He was the guy he was handing the ball off to. It's bizarre. Right? Couple of other big notable passings, and we talked about the Washington Redskins, right? Former Dave Butts, 72, one of the Hogs, won 2 rings. When he was drafted out of Purdue, he was the biggest guy in the NFL. And I always thought he was the biggest guy anyway, but it was actually confirmed. 72, but he was unbelievable. The only guy I ever thought that was bigger was Joe Jacoby, right?
That's right.
But Dave Butts and Jeff Bolliger, I know you're going to be listening to the show. He's having some personal matters to tend to today, but we would never overlook on a notable passing somebody of Dave Butts' stature.
That's right.
Yep.
So, pre-Daniel Snyder, the Washington Redskins.
The Jack Ken Cook era, if you will.
Joe Gibbs, Super Bowl champs.
Yeah.
That's when things were good in Washington, if you will.
They were great.
But Dave Butts, Jacoby, Russ Grimm, those guys, Mark Schlereth, guys were instrumental in leading the way for the Washington Redskins to win those titles under Gibbs.
Under Joe Gibbs, by the way, one of the greatest coaches of all time, right?
Correct.
Another big one in the NFL, Steve, Ray Guy.
Yeah, this one is a tough one.
72.
I-
Dave Butts, 71. Ray Guy, 72. They played in the exact same era, actually.
Well, I thought Ray Guy was much older. He's one of these guys where I thought he was much older than 72. But Ray Guy will go down. Now his stats now, like if you look at his stats compared to what today's
Yes, thank
stuff
you.
is,
Good point.
right? He's like number 36 or something, right? 42 point something, net average, things like that. Or, you know what I mean? Like
Yep.
punting stats. But folks, when we tell you Ray Guy was the best punter we've ever seen, I've ever seen. Ray Guy's ability to pin the opponent down. Ray Guy was so instrumental for the Oakland Raiders' success. First punter in the Hall of Fame. Ray Guy, R.I.P. Hall of Famer, first punter to get into the Hall of Fame.
First punter to be drafted number one.
Number one.
Yep.
But Ray Guy had a great career.
Southern Miss, did he come out
Played
of
at Southern Miss, and Ray Guy, R.I.P. That's a tough one. He's one of our favorite players.
I know. And he actually literally changed the game back in that day. I mean, he set Stabler up, and it was just, he was awesome. And like you said, Steve, first punter in the Hall of Fame, and he is the punter that we'll ever see. And you're right. You guys kicking Denver now, they're kicking 75 yards, regularly. But Ray Guy was an absolute stud. And Steve, we just got another comment from Jeremy, who was a very astute, loyal listener of the show.
Yes.
Says it would not, if not for the Hogs, and that was, the Jacoby guys that we talked about. Timmy Smith was the Super Bowl MVP, was for what, over 200 yards, something?
Without the Hogs, it's a valid point, Jeremy. But that's exactly
Yeah,
like we said, that the Hogs sustained the Washington Redskins.
he did.
When you had quarterback turnover with Jay Schrader and Doug Williams or Mark Rippon, whoever it was.
And they all won Super Bowls because of Joe
It
Gibbs.
was interchangeable. Your Tim Smiths and so on and so forth, a running back. But you had the Hogs there as a consistent piece to the.
And on the other side of the ball on the defense was Dave Butts, the anchor of that team, right? In the Chris Hamburger days, right? Remember that?
Oh, absolutely.
So anyway, folks, we hate to end on a down note, and it's not a down note. It's because we recognize what these guys accomplished in the world of sports, and we would love to hear from you. So keep sending us emails at sportswithmano@gmail.com.
Yes.
And we can't thank you guys enough. So, Tony out in San Francisco and Oregon, wherever.
Miriam in Washington, our new loyal listener.
She's a big fan,
Yes, she
apparently.
is. Thank you, Miriam.
Yep.
And, Mike Garvey, Jeremy, James Walsh out in Long Island. Jim is a little busy with his current job right now. But Mr. Walsh is a loyal listener.
Big
And the
time.
list is growing.
Yep.
Any questions, sportswithmano@gmail.com. And again, folks, we always appreciate
Yep.
you guys tuning in, listening to us on a Saturday morning or Sunday morning, whenever we do the show. And can't thank our producer Rob enough for doing some fact checking there for
Yep.
us. And again, it's a beautiful day on Saturday here in the Northeast. And
Go catch a football game somewhere, right?
Yep.
Go catch a football game. It's pretty good. But thanks for joining us, everybody, and we'll see you here next week. And like I said, stay in touch with us because we're staying in touch with you.
You got it. Have a
See you
great
guys
weekend.
next week. Thanks, Rob.
Thanks, Rob.